We know him better than his mother, and we are not unable to reach him as we reach those before him. The Israelis say he is our precious gain that came to us on a golden platter. Tehran whispers he is the hell that has come to meet the Palestinians and Israelis who hope that they had not chosen Haniyeh. Rather, he is the password for the end of the Gaza war and the path of Iran's revenge against Israel. Western and Israeli intelligence circles say, "Long live Sinwar, the man who does not smile or get angry, the strong man devoid of feelings who will never leave Gaza and will never surrender, and will not, as those who investigated him from the Israelis describe him." Today, as many believe, he will be the reason for the end of the war and the valley of the crushing response from multiple fronts that Khamenei, that is, Israel, pledged and promised with all faith after it assassinated Ismail Haniyeh. While he was sleeping and reassured about the leadership of Hamas today, it comes to the Iranians. Whether it was involved in killing Haniyeh, as the Western report claimed, or it is grieving over his death and wants revenge, as Tehran says. In addition to many warnings that may impose a recalculation by returning the response, or even canceling it, or perhaps reducing it to a minimum. The lowest that does not harm the wolf and does not destroy the sheep. These are some of the equations that we will shed light on for those who ask about Iran's response and about the reactor of Yahya Sinwar, Iran's man, reaching the top of the pyramid in Hamas, and the messages of Hezbollah Secretary General Hassan Nasrallah to Bashar al-Assad that you should have supported us in our war, but you did not do so in light of the talk about movements by his chief of staff to support Iran. But behind the back of Assad, who is committed to the instructions of the Russians, which are that you have nothing to do with a multi-front or single-front response to Israel. At a time when American crowds continue to arrive to protect Tel Aviv and perhaps to destroy Iran, it was necessary and thought of a response greater than what is permitted for it. In light of all the data, let us start with choosing Sinwar as the head of Hamas. Yes, it was a regional and international shock. Internationally, I feared that it would disrupt the negotiations, exacerbate the war, and expand its flames. But Western and Israeli reports melted to the exact opposite of this. A choice that might end the war, linking this to his political ambitions in choosing Sinwar, according to these reports, instead of Haniyeh, might help push the hostage negotiations and end the war for several considerations. The first of which is that it was his intention, according to these reports, that he was consequences before the negotiations, because Mohammed is burdened with visions that may be contradictory between Tehran and Doha, and with them Ankara, and he also lives outside Gaza. As for Sinwar, he will deal with the negotiations in a more realistic manner since he is still inside Gaza. Sinwar may also want to play his role as the movement's leader and ensure his election in the Hamas movement elections in 2025, which he cannot do until the Bet deal is completed, which will lead to the end of the war and ensure that he demands a halt to the assassinations of Hamas leaders. Sinwar's importance in this position increases because, in addition to becoming the head of Hamas's political bureau, he is also the leader in Gaza, and it is possible that he will strengthen his position as a leader and strengthen Hamas' position as an alternative to Fatah, the Palestinian Authority, and the Palestine Liberation Organization. This may justify the obstacles that prevented the selection of Khaled Mashal as the movement's president, despite Mashal being considered a moderate figure close to Qatar. At a time when many analyses suggest that Israel will not negotiate with Sinwar and will not rest until it liquidates him, considering him part of the plan for the greatest disaster in Israel's history, namely the Al-Aqsa flood, especially since he is Iran's man and the most extremist in Hamas. However, from here we can highlight the second point, which is the Iranian-Israeli benefit of participation. On the Iranian side, it can be said that if Tehran had a say yesterday over Hamas with the presence of Ismail Haniyeh, then its say is what controls Hamas today with the presence of Sinwar, far from the influences of Qatar and others. And this is the valuable gain that came to Iran. As for Israel, it may view the matter from the perspective of partial interest, that Iran be satisfied with a small response to the assassination of Haniyeh, or postponement, or even cancellation in exchange for Israel agreeing to allow Sinwar to manage the Gaza Strip for a while and negotiate with him on the release of the hostages and a water truce. Hebrew reports even went so far as to say that the backstage of the next deal is to end the war and Sinwar's exit from Gaza and allow an alternative government in it. Perhaps what supports, even theoretically, the hypothesis that Israel and Iran may reach an implicit understanding are some indicators that must be reviewed according to analysis and research centers, including the Iranian president's statement that Iran reserves the right to respond to Israel, which is a sentence that Iran usually says when it does not want to respond immediately at least. It is also possible to read the statements of Hezbollah Secretary General Hassan Nasrallah when he hinted at the possibility of responding alone to Israel. What is happening is that many Iraqis stand in the way of the comprehensive response that Iran talked about, even if reports intelligence leaked by CNN. I went to that. Hezbollah seems to be attacking Israel independently of Iran because it is moving faster than Tehran, which is still working on determining how to respond, indicating that Hezbollah may act without prior warning, which does not apply to Iran given Lebanon's proximity to Israel as a direct neighbor. According to these reports, Hezbollah will launch the first strike, and the targets will be military and security, not civilian, including the army headquarters in central Tel Aviv, the Mossad headquarters, and intelligence bases. We should also not forget that Nasrallah sent an indirect message to Bashar al-Assad that Israel's victory means the end of the dream of liberating the Golan, which was supported by reports that Assad is sending veiled messages to Israel that he is not interested in the comprehensive response that Tehran circles talked about. These reports stated that the Syrian Chief of Staff, General Abdul Karim Ibrahim, made moves with Iran without the knowledge of the Syrian president, approving attacks on Israel from Syrian territory and agreeing in mid-July to launch marches towards Israel. All of this without the desire of Assad, who is committed to Russia's instructions not to enter any war against Israel. Finally, it can be said that the successive strikes by America and Britain on Yemen may make it difficult for it to participate in any coordinated attack with Tehran on Israel, which has ensured that Iran is taking 1,000 calculations into account with the rush of American armored vehicles, aircraft, and forces to defend it. After all this, the question remains, will Iran carry out a small, limited response to save face? Or will it be satisfied with its victory by choosing Sinwar, the head of Hamas? Oh, Tehran, what shook you was the choice of